Do you think we have a new alternative in the market, which is the Strait of Hormuz? Because the flow of tankers through the Strait of Hormuz can change the price of oil, in my opinion, in a long run.
Yeah, but that's I mean, from a practical standpoint, I mean, in terms of outcomes, sure. I mean, look, we used to have Aramco, the American Arab oil company, the Arab American oil company, and they basically overproduced Saudi oil production infrastructure. I forget the numbers. At 12.5 million at one point in time was maximum production, but they were only producing at 9 million. Why? Why have over? Because that's very expensive to have all this infrastructure that you're not using. And the answer is because when the United States needs more oil on the market, the Saudis can increase. You don't have to wait. They've got it right there. Just turn it on, out it comes, go. And then when we tighten it up a little bit, the Saudis do it. And we had that relationship that said, we will guarantee your security. In exchange, you help be our market control mechanism. In theory, Iran could do the same thing through the Strait of Hormuz. Constrict, release, constrict. The difference is they're constricting shipments that aren't their own. In Saudi Arabia with Aramco, you're turning on Saudi oil pipes, which are connected to Saudi oil fields and all that. Here would be Iran constricting the global economy, and that could be effective in war, but in peace, that's a non-starter. Iran can never be seen as actively squeezing the energy production potential of Kuwait or Bahrain or Iraq or even Saudi Arabia by saying we're only going to let a certain amount of ships through there. So this is why we need a ceasefire effectively. But what's important is that the Iranians can shut it down anytime they want to. It's also important that Iran keep it open and allow for the free flow of energy as long as you pay your toll tax. $2 million a ship, I think, is what they're charging, depending on the cargo. But let that happen, and you're good to go. But I don't think Iran is going to be controlling because that's not Iran. First of all, Iran's never said that they're going to become the arbiter of who makes money, who doesn't make money. Iran believes that all nations that produce energy are sovereign nations, and that's their sovereign decisions. And I believe Iran would support that as long as nations aren't positioning themselves. So I think part of the regional security framework has to include an energy security component, where, in addition, if you have non-aggression pacts, it means Iran doesn't fear overnight the Strait of Hormuz being shut down, which means Iran then must commit to the free flow of energy. And there has to be some very well-defined exceptions to that so that everybody understands that if this happens, then Iran has the right to do this. But so long as expectations are met, Iran has to let the traffic go through.
Yeah, I think that's why I would say Israel is losing Saudi Arabia and Qatar, because the situation, the calculation on the part of these governments in these countries has totally changed. And do you think that is there any way for Israel to do something about it, or to reverse what's going on with the case of Iran? Because Saudi Arabia and Qatar are, I would say, so much dependent on Iran right now. It doesn't matter if they're going to rebuild or they're going to build new pipeline, but they're not going to get everything out of their countries by these pipelines. They're going to be dependent on the Strait of Hormuz. Not only when it comes to the Strait, we have the internet cables that they're talking. Many people are talking about that in Iran right now.
Yeah.
This is.
I remember in the 1990s, I had a conversation with the Israelis about the growing threat of Hamas. When I was traveling to Israel from 1994 through 1998, every time I went to Israel, there was a terrorist attack, a Hamas terrorist attack that killed people, blowing up Dizengoff bus, blowing up a restaurant, blowing up this, blowing up that, blowing everything. Some of it happened right next door to me. I could hear the explosions. One blew up a restaurant. I had lunch at the day before the Great Gate go by. I mean, it was and so this was day-to-day reality in there. And I had a conversation with an Israeli, and because I was working with the Israeli intelligence services, security services. So when we'd have lunch, we talk about a variety of things. And one of the interesting things they said is that the one guy said the best way to make peace with Hamas is to actually negotiate directly with them, invite them to the table, and make them part of the solution, not just being the problem. It's very easy to be a terrorist when everybody expects you to do nothing more than just be a terrorist. Very low bar. But if you have to become a problem solver, if you now have a vested interest in the solution, different. It's politically impossible for this to happen because of the domestic dynamics. But, one by one, if I were in charge of Israel, I could do things. For instance, Gaza needs to be rebuilt totally. I would create a mechanism to rebuild Gaza for the benefit of the Palestinian people. But to give you an example, right down here, they're developing. I had a relative once. She, very smart lady, made a lot of money. And I remember I visited once, and on her table, she had a map of Bozeman, Montana. And I said, she lived in Beverly Hills in $1 million house. I said, what the hell? You got a map of Bozeman, Montana? She said, well, I'm buying land. I said, oh, well, how do you buy land? I mean, so she had mapped it out. She sat there and she predicted where all the critical crossroads would be. He said, this is where they build banks. This is where they build gas stations. This is where they build infrastructure. So I'm going to buy the land that they need to build the infrastructure. And then when they come to me, I don't sell them the land. I lease them the land. So I keep a continuous fleet and I keep control over the situation. So if they ever piss me off, I can sell the land and their bank is gone. It has to go. And I went, well, that's sort of evil genius. And it was. I would do the same thing with Gaza. I wouldn't say it out front, but I would rebuild Gaza, but I'd buy every piece of property on the important cornerstones and I would own Gaza that way. And I'd make sure the Gaza people prospered, but they also understood at the end of the day who controlled what. Or maybe if they don't understand, for instance, right now it's the same thing, development taking place down here. I don't know who owns the crossroads, but I do know that, that's going to become very essential for the local economic development of this area. So whoever owns it sort of has more control than an elected official in many ways. That's how, so I could solve the Gaza problem without any military force and actually rebuilding and making it look good. But at the end of the day, I have direct control over what happens in Gaza. I could do the same thing in Lebanon. I could withdraw completely from Lebanon. First thing I do, therefore, though, is rebuild Beirut. And I'm not going to let the Saudis come in. I'm going to use my cutouts and I'm going to own Beirut. I'm going to buy there, tear down the buildings, buy the important crossroads, build the infrastructure, therefore politically empower certain people. Rather than seeking the isolation of Hezbollah, I would seek the co-option of Hezbollah. I would tell Hezbollah, I want to work with you. I want you to be part of the future of Lebanon. I want to redirect Hezbollah's activities from fighting me to building Lebanon. But they're building a Lebanon that I control because I control the crossroads. And you see, I could do this game all day long. I could do the same thing with Iran. I'd be building economic reach into Iran. That's how Israel wins this war. But the Israelis can't think that way. They don't understand that because they have to dominate. They don't have the patience, strategic patience. They become such a warlike society and a racist society. But Israel, there's so much vulnerability in Iran right now. There's so much vulnerability because it's been subjected to sanctions for so long, aging infrastructure, a lot of damage has been done. There's the necessity of reconstruction has to be something that it will define. You saw what happened. You saw how powerful Rafsanjani became after the end of the Iran-Iraq war. How did Rafsanjani become so? Because he got involved in the reconstruction of Iran, and he empowered the Revolutionary Guard to get involved in that too. And the Revolutionary Guard went from being a bunch of 20-year-old fanatics who, did their bonsai charges at the Iraqis to being businessmen. The Revolutionary Guard today is a far more sophisticated entity today because they were involved in the economic rehabilitation and reconstruction of Iran. There's a lot of political potential in reconstruction. And if I were the Israelis, I would stop bombing stuff and begin talking about how I can own the crossroads and think long-term and make things happen. That's what I would do. That's the only way Israel's out of this. Israel thinks they're going to get out of this by bombing. It'll be the end of Israel.
What do we know about the Iron Dome batteries? Who's producing these batteries? Because Hezbollah is hitting them right and left, not only in southern part of Lebanon. In 24 hours, they hit 3 of them. Today, we've learned that 2 of them were hit in the northern part of Israel. And I don't know how sustainable is that for Israel with this sort of new attitude of Hezbollah attacking using FPV drones to attack Iron Dome batteries.
Well, it's not just Iron Dome batteries. They're attacking the depth, the logistical depth of the Israeli presence. Israel has never had to deal with Hezbollah having the kind of potential to dominate the operational depth of the battlefield. Hezbollah has always done a very good job at the point of contact, and Hezbollah has shown in the past the ability to send Katyushka rockets in to upset the political economic balance of northern Israel. But the Israelis always sort of had free hand to maneuver and to concentrate troops and to build logistics and all this, and then to flow resources into the battlefield and flow resources out. Well, now at the tip of the spear, Israel's getting the snot handed to them. I mean, they're just the Hezbollah is just beating them raw, straight up fight. I'm not saying Hezbollah's not suffering casualties. Of course they are. This is war, but and Israel has a lot of technological advantages, but the Israeli soldiers aren't that good. They're not that brave. They don't want to die. I'm not saying anybody wants to die, but if you go into combat believing that your life is valuable, you're going to die sooner. If you go into combat believing that you are an expendable resource and therefore you will be professional in the use of this resource to ensure that you get the maximum benefit out of it, but understanding that war is designed to kill and there's a likely probability of you dying, you might live. Because now you're doing all the right things. You're not hesitating at the moment because you think you're going to live, because you think your life's valuable. You do what the training tells you. And I think Hezbollah operates that way. I'm not saying the Hezbollah people don't get scared. I'm not saying there isn't, but I'm saying overall, Hezbollah is a much more professional, efficient fighting machine than the Israelis are, because Hezbollah people understand and are prepared for the potential of death. And the Israelis don't want to die. They avoid death. Therefore, they make mistakes. They're hesitant. And they die. Hezbollah is exploiting this on the battlefield and now throughout the depth of Israel. They're going 20, 30 kilometers in with these FPV drones, and it's just absolutely devastating for Israel. Israel doesn't have an answer to this problem.
But is that going to force Netanyahu to change its policy, or you see the same sort of attitude? And how long does the United States want to support Israeli, and what are the capabilities of the United States right now producing these sort of missiles, interceptors for Israel? And you didn't mention the Iron Dome batteries.
Well, the Iron Dome batteries, I mean, first of all, you have to be careful. Israel expends a lot of Iron Dome missiles. I mean, so you froze, so I don't know if you can hear me or not. The clock is ticking. I'll keep talking just in case the audience can hear me and you can't. But Israel expends Iron Dome missiles in a prodigious level. So, taking out 1 or 2 batteries here, doesn't change the strategic balance. But it is a problem because every battery you take out, that's an area that's supposed to be defended. It's no longer being defended, and now other weapons and other resources can be brought in. Could you hear me the whole time, or was I just babbling into thin air?
Yeah, I can hear you right now.
Okay, because I got 3. I got 2 of you on screen. I got Nima. Oh, there. Now I only got 1 of you. Okay. Well, I don't know if your audience heard me, but I don't want to repeat. Look, the Iron Dome. No, it's a thing, just like anything else. But the Israelis produce a lot of Iron Dome, and we produce. I mean, we build it for them. We build the missiles. We build everything. Are you alive, or are you there? Move, so I know you're alive.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, we're alive. Go ahead.
It looks like you froze. I was like, oh no, he did it again.
No.
But no, this is a problem. When you take out Iron Dome, I'm not so worried about the impact that has on production. What it represents, though, is that Hezbollah can now dictate, operational realities into the depth. The Iron Dome is supposed to protect. You don't just put Iron Dome haphazardly. One of the things the Israelis taught me, I mean, it was actually brilliant. We were trying to look for installations of value in Iraq. And Iraq's a big country. So what the Israelis did is they sat there and they plotted every air defense installation in Iraq, plotted it out. And then you have, you have the the Rolands and other things that are only used to protect high value things. So you look where the Rolands are, you assess it based upon the threat dynamic that's coming in. You start drawing arrows where the air defense is laid out to defend against a threat coming here, and you get the intersection of the threat arrows and you go, there's something valuable right here. And then you start looking around and going, look at that. Look what's going on. Over time, they built a new road here. They brought in power here. There's something happening in this spot. Okay, now we're on to something. So when Israel puts Iron Dome down or something, they're protecting something. Because the Israelis, when we projected onto Iraq, doing this, what I thought was brilliant, air defense pattern analysis, the Israelis are projecting on that because they understand that they deploy air defense in a similar fashion. This is a big hint to the Iranians right now. If you want to know where something value is in Israel, plot out all the air defense and do what I just told you, because that's how the Israelis think. Things of value. But that's, I'm going to get in trouble for saying that. I'm not here giving advice to the Iranians. Anybody who's fighting a war, do air defense. You Ukrainians, you can do that against the Russians. And you Russians, you can do that against the Ukrainians. I'm an equal opportunity air defense pattern analysis guy. But the point is, when Hezbollah blow these things up, they're blowing up something that's there to protect something.